I don't want to bore you with any big presentation about myself. I think it's just important that you know my perspective when talking about communicating the product roadmap. So I've worked for a company called Testo, where we did process management and quality management for big retail and food chains like McDonald's, like changing their quality management from a analog to a digital system, basically. Like it's a very complex product, and it's mainly a key account sales approach. And like with my current company, Cive, we are doing opinion tech research, also very complex product. Target groups are SMB and key accounts. So everything I tell you today comes out of the B2B SaaS perspective with a lot of key accounts involved, just to give you a heads up, because I think it might look different for someone who has always worked in B2C, for example. So that's just as a quick start. But now let's go into the topic. So who of you is interested in buying an iPhone 12? Like any iPhone fans here? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look at it. It's beautiful. 5G speeds, great camera, great everything, processor. I mean, it's the best smartphone out there, right? So a lot of people interested in buying one. But what happens after you read this? Like, this is a screenshot I took yesterday. It's like so it's 2 days old. The iPhone 13 release date, all the details about the new functionalities, the camera, the processor, everything is so much better than in the iPhone 12. So are you still interested in buying it? Or do you wait until fall, until the iPhone 13 is here? And I think this is something that a lot of us have experienced in any kind of communication of new features, new releases, new products that we did. As soon as you do that, you shift the demand of your customers potentially into the future. They're not interested in the current product anymore. So this is something that we have to be very aware of in product communication. And there is a maybe very famous or infamous example. Maybe some of you know this device. Anyone know what this is? It's the Osborne One. Osborne One is like one of the first personal computers, and it's infamous, as I said, because there is something called the Osborne Effect. And the Osborne Effect is the following: like, this Osborne One was a really successfully sold personal computer. Like they sold it successfully through dealers at end customers, and the guy who led the company very early in 1982 announced the launch of the Osborne 2 coming to the market 1 year later. And what did happen? This is the Osborne Effect. All the orders that they already had for the Osborne 1 got canceled pretty much. I mean, the intention of announcing the Osborne 2 was, of course, to create interest, to maybe create early orders and shift the attention away from the competition, especially in this very hardly fought personal computer market. But at the end, they killed all the cash flow for their current product. They even tried to sell the product below production costs, like really go very below with the prices. It had no effect at all. And in 1983, the company was bankrupt. The Osborne 2 never made it to the market. This is called the Osborne Effect, and it can be a result of wrong roadmap communication. So that's something I wanted to give as an introduction. And if I give you this infamous example, of course, the question comes to mind: why do we need a product roadmap at all? And it was very interesting because this was one of the questions in the Slack channel when we announced this event. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there shouldn't be a product roadmap. It's quite the opposite. I think it's like one of the most essential tools a product leader should be responsible for. And the main reason for me can be given by this quote by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry: a goal without a plan is just a wish. You know, there's a company strategy and we want to go a certain way, and at least in my opinion, our responsibility as product leaders is setting product milestones, at least, you know, the best we can do in looking into the future. I'm a big fan of agile development. Of course, I love the agility, and especially in early phases of a product, to discover the product together also with your customers. I'm a big fan of that. And I know there might be a lot of changes, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't make a plan at the current time, what could be happening in the next month or years. And so if we talk about product roadmap and communicating the product roadmap, first of all, I think it's very important that you internally have a good way of communicating the product roadmap. And if I have this, every one of you have something like this. You have a timeline, you have certain releases or new products or new product features that you are launching. And probably every one of you has something like this, like a different view on what is happening in short term, in midterm, and in long term, no matter how you define it. For me, short term would be like the next 3 months, midterm would be the next 6 to 12 months, long term would be everything beyond 1 year into the future. And of course, the farther you go to the right on this timeline, the fuzzier your plans get. I mean, that's the result of agile development, of course. You don't really know how it will evolve. And it's fine to have it that way, but still you should make a plan. And why should you make this plan? Because you need this visibility in certain areas of the company. But also what you should think about is, and this is a terminology coming from the military and also the IT sector, please be aware of the need to know principle. My first company was a very big company with very established communication process. When I went to my second company, it's only 50 people in the company. I had the feeling like there were no communication rules at all, and everyone could know everything if he just wanted to. But please be aware of the need to know principle, because is there really a good use for this information for the people who could get the information internally? And I give you some examples. Like, of course, like when you talk to your CEO, you yourself as the product leader or with board members, they must have full visibility of what you are planning, what your product roadmap looks like, because it like one-to-one should resemble the company strategy. Otherwise, you're not coordinated, right? And a lot of especially financial decisions will rely on what you say will be happening with the product and how the revenue streams might change into the future. So there's really no need to limit the visibility to board members or the CEO. But this doesn't count for every department in your company. Maybe, for example, you have development leads, like maybe in my case, the VP of engineering. He's responsible for setting up the team in the right way that he can develop what we want to develop, hiring the right people, the right developers who can do that. Of course, you should give him a certain outlook that allows him to adequately adapt the team to what we are planning to do. So if you go in with your product in a totally new direction, you might need new developers doing that with a totally new technology skill. Of course, you should know what probably will be happening in 12 months. Otherwise, he can't react in the right time. Maybe also it could be the case for marketing. Doesn't have to be, but like, for example, also with my first company, when we came to the market, we wanted to come to the market with a big bang. And this is was a really big go-to-market communication strategy. And our marketing team was involved very early in the process to prepare this big bang that we wanted to create. And these are just examples. It's the need to know principle, because you have to decide which area needs to know. But one of my recommendations, of course, everything that really rather goes to the outside, rather the customer and the market, should not really have, bless you, a big transparency about what's happening. So especially your sales teams, and therefore indirectly your customers, in my opinion, should not be aware of too much what's going on into the future. And I will go into more detail why this is. But first of all, in my opinion, you need to have a roadmap. You need to communicate it to align the teams and align the strategy of all the different teams accordingly. And you should use the need to know principle. But now take a look at what happens if you open the roadmap communication to the outside facing business teams. There are benefits and risks. So start with benefits. Especially if you're in software as a service, you know that your product is constantly evolving. The product you're selling today is not the product you are selling in 3 months, it's not the product you are selling in 6 months. It will constantly evolve and get better. If your sales guys talk with a customer and you have a typical conversion time from a first qualified lead, from the first conversation to the customer to a closed deal of 3 months, it would give you a disadvantage compared to the competition to sell the product you have right now and not the product you have in 3 months. So you make your product offer better if your salesperson have this information. How will this product look like when the customer signs the order? If you leave this away, your competition might win the project because they already have the feature the customer is looking for. Second of all, especially if you work like I did a lot with key accounts, you have those really, really demanding key accounts. They know they're important to you and your revenue stream, and they have special wishes, and they make it their business of making clear that they are so important that they want to have their wishes included. And you might easier land such an important order from a key account if you say, yes, of course, at the, like if we're discussing this now, we're closing the deal until October, and in October, I can promise you this feature will be included. Also, salespeople gain more confidence in their communication towards customers. I have also participated in sales teams as well, worked there, and I know the situation. If you go to a customer and the customer asks you, hey, but what about this feature, you know, and you can't really answer the question. That's a pretty uncomfortable situation, especially for young salespeople who are not experienced, maybe in selling the value of what you already have. You know, they kind of become a little bit more defensive. They don't know really what to do and how to answer. And you give them more confidence if they have something where they can look into and say, hey, yes, this is a feature request a lot of other customers have. I can tell you it's already on our roadmap. I can't tell you an exact date, but it's already on there. Or maybe they even can say, yes, this feature will be there at the end of August. Gives them much more confidence in their attitude towards the customers. You also gain more time for feedback and training if you announce functionalities early. Help your salespeople to really, like from day one, start selling it successfully. And you reduce redundant communication between the product teams and the sales teams. We all had the situation that we are like, you know, there's this important functionality and 5 different salespeople asked at 5 different times, when is this feature coming? When is this feature coming? And you waste just so much time in redundant communication to them. So if there's, you know, a common place where they can take a look at it, it makes you much more efficient. But there are risks. My biggest risk or my biggest fear always is you lose agility. As soon as you announce something, it is like not written in stone, but you have made a commitment. So you lose some of your agility. None of us probably like that, especially if you're working with software. You also have the risk that salespeople don't communicate in the right way. So they might say something like, you know, you tell them, yes, we have this feature on our roadmap. It will probably come in August, but you know there's some risk to that. We are very early in the development and so on. But they go out and say, I can promise you 100% it will be there August 1st. Then, or they just, you know, misspecify what the feature really can do, or the product really can do when it comes to the market. Also, and this is the example of the iPhone before, you might shift the buying decision and therefore the revenue flow into the future. Who likes that? You know, rather, I work a lot with salespeople and sales teams to help them sell the current value of the product. This is very, very important. With SaaS, you always have this danger that especially inexperienced salespeople go out there, they get a customer request, and instead of selling the value of what is already there, they're saying, oh yes, you're right, we have to do that and we will do that, and only then you will of course buy the product. Stop that, work with your salespeople, but yeah, the risk still is there. And last risk that it is there, communicating anything you are doing in product development makes it easier for your competition, because as soon as your sales team knows, as soon as customers know, even if it's not somewhere written publicly, some companies also have public Trello boards or something, but even if you don't have something like this, your competitors will know. But don't be very sure about that. And you make it easier for them to adapt their strategy. So my personal recommendation, the rule of thumb that I came up with, Roadmap transparency for sales and customers should not be bigger than the typical conversion time from sales lead to deal. So in like my current company, we have a typical cycle from like the first conversation to the customer to a closed deal of 3 months. This is what I give them as an outlook into the future. Here's what will happen in the next 3 months, and it helps them sell more successfully. In my last company, we had like much longer sales cycles. They could take between 6 and 12 months, and sometimes even longer. There, I decided to give them a 6-month outlook. Everything else would really hurt our agility too much, but it was necessary, because if you talk like one of our biggest customers, McDonald's, about what will happen in the future, those customers also want to know a little bit more than what you would like to give out, of course. Out of that, I tried to formulate some best practices, which I came up with, and some of the points you already had. So use the need to know principle, limit transparency for the product roadmap, especially to the outside team, sales and customers. Set up clear communication rules for upcoming releases. So even if you give information to your sales teams, make it clear what they can say, what they cannot say, when they should come back to you. This is really, really important. You don't want just like a free communication, everyone tells something different to their customers. Also, I recommend to use, and this could be a special session we do at some point of time, because we product people always are in the middle between business and development, but be very sure to use a different language and maybe also a different tool when communicating the upcoming releases to business teams. Like, you cannot just take your Jira tickets and, which are very technically in how they are written and they are focused on functionality, and use that to communicate your roadmap to someone who should sell the product. So you should always have a value-based communication, a much easier communication in terms of technical terms. I mean, I work with very technically complex products. A lot of salespeople don't even understand what is happening in the product itself, but they also don't have to if you sell the value right and make it formulated in a good way. And be as specific as possible about the value that the feature brings, but don't be so specific about functionality details and also timelines. Yeah, this keeps up your agility. Yeah, I mean, you can always say like something. We will have an API connection. That's something where typically to system X, Y, Z. Even if you have wireframes at the beginning of your development cycles, don't show them to the salespeople yet. You know how it evolves, that the functionality will change. And it doesn't really matter often to the buying decision of the customers. They just need to know it will be possible, but not how exactly it will look like. And also regarding timelines, of course, I always use buffers. Of course, like in my roadmap plan with development, I have a certain time that we expect the functionality to be done. This is not the day that I communicate to the sales teams. Of course, there will be a buffer on top. It's just good risk management. So this is like a little insight from my work so far in the companies I had, and I directly jumped to the second part I wanted to show you, which some people asked me to do, because when like I think at the end of 2019, I got to know Monday.com, and it was for me a great tool in general, and it's a tool I use for all kind of things in my daily work. But also I use it to present the product roadmap to the business teams. So I thought it would be a good thing to include this little presentation of Monday.com as a really great tool to you guys. I'm not working for Monday, so it's not like, and I have no stock options of Monday or something. It's really just my opinion. So I would say I jump over to Monday.com. At the end, we come back because you probably have questions or comments, but I would rather go first to this. Just a second, I will switch to my browser. Now you should see Monday.com. Yeah. All right. What is Monday.com? Monday.com, at the first time when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is like a nice, colorful Excel. And that's maybe one of the easiest way to describe it. But it's really a lot more because it can do so much. It's for me, first of all, it started with task management. I set up like all of this, what you see here is not my company details. I set up an example project for you. Yeah, this was of course very important because I cannot show you details. But first of all, when I started, I just use it as a task management tool. There are a lot of templates for that already from them created, and it was for me a great way to have visibility in my team and for myself about tasks. Like you see it here in kind of a table form. There are many different forms of how this can look like. For example, there's also a sprint planning sheet, and if you want to, you can also view this in the Kanban way if you want to. It's not only a list, but also it comes in different views. You can do a lot of different things. I would just encourage you to go there because it's free the first 14 days. Everyone can try it. Just give them your email. That's everything they want from you, and then you can test and you can use one of those templates. What I will show you now is what I recreated, the roadmap, how I presented to salespeople in my company, and it looks like this. Everyone in the company can access this list. There's nice functionality for that. You can create groups and single people that you want to give access to. So it's really has a good user management in the background, and the salespeople see now, first of all, what is currently in progress, what is to be released in the next 3 months. And there are the functionalities below that. They also see what is in the backlog, which I personally find very, for me, it's very important because I want the salespeople not to have the feeling they're giving me information about the market, what the customer wants, but they don't know if this point shows up somewhere. Is the product team aware of this? They should, like everything they get as feedback from the market, should be at least shown in the backlog, and maybe also with a decision mark that we don't prioritize it at the moment because of this and that reason. But I'm a big fan of transparency in that regard because, as I said earlier, they have to have confidence in front of the customer when talking about the product and also the future of the product. And at the bottom, you have basically everything that has been released, and you could shift those points like ever you want from one table to the other. Of course, the normal way would be a feature comes into the backlog, it moves at some point of time to in progress or to be released in the next 3 months, and at the end in release down there. And what did we do? My team and I do in the current company is also to add some special, like this is a table that we created with the columns that we think are useful in our company. You can define anything you want there. Like if you want to make a new column, it's as easy as that. You just can add it here wherever you want, and it can have many different things inside. For example, here you have a person that is responsible. You have communication to the customer, which I said earlier. I think this is very important. Salespeople should be aware. Is it freely allowed to talk about this? Is it allowed on request? There's a certain process. They have to come to their sales team lead or to someone from the product team to ask if it's okay to talk with a certain customer about it, or if it's not allowed yet. We also give them a lot of transparency how we see this functionality and how we rate it, because I think it gives you. We had this session about product prioritization last time. Having a feedback from your sales teams if they see things totally different, for me, makes total sense. In the worst case, the worst case is you just have to repeat why you prioritize it a certain way or discuss a little bit. But in the best case, you are made aware of a different market reality that you think you are seeing. So for me, it's always good to have something like we have made a customer value from 1 to 10. 1 the lowest, 10 is the highest. We show them round about an effort class. We don't go into detail. This will take 3 development months. No, that's something that salespeople don't need to know, but give them a feeling. It's just like a small thing to do. And we just took t-shirt sizes, S, M, L, XL. And also maybe, because this is something that I always tell my salespeople, you of course can influence the product roadmap if you show me a letter of intent that the customer is really willing to invest some money if you will develop this functionality. So if there is a confirmed order value, this is also something we put in there. You see which is the planned timeline for this functionality. We show them if we are very important on time or if there is a delay. And we show the real release date that we have. And at some point of time, You might then say, okay, we are done. Oh yeah, celebration icons here at Monday.com, and you can move this item from in progress to released, and you can set up like email or other or Slack notifications to the team. They see that something has been happening. You can also do a lot of communication about this, and I like this a lot. Before you release the functionality. So maybe you want to include a screenshot how the functionality will look like. I just took an example picture, I think, of iTunes Store or something. So you can add it here. You can, what we do a lot is we add a Q&A because the questions are often the same about new functionalities. So every question salespeople are asking, we just put inside there so that the next person having the same question don't come to us, or we can just say, hey, take a look at the Q&A. So you give a lot of possibilities to the sales team to get to know this functionality before it's even there. And it makes you much more efficient at the point of time when it's there, without letting them into a, we don't let our sales team into the test environments, for example, which would not make sense in my opinion. But if you give them such information, they already can have a good feeling for the functionality before it's there. Yeah, what else can you do? A lot of things, but I cannot show you all. But for example, maybe here in the backlog, you have something like new charts for data analysis. This sounds like a very big point. So maybe you want to split it up into single items that explain it in more detail. That's something you could do. Yeah, and this is how we do it. Just to see, we also try to like your connection to ERP systems possible via API or a new Android app with optimized usability. As you see, as I said before, the wording is done in a way that it's value-based, that the people know what's behind this functionality, and not very technically. Like our Jira ticket for that, of course, looks totally different. Yeah, and you like this is Monday. It's really that like there's a lot of stuff to explore. Just do it. It's just an example how I use it. And I've seen in our company also that a lot of people are using it different ways. It helps me a lot in everything I do, and maybe it's something for you as well. And yeah, that's basically all I wanted to give you as an insight. I think I stayed inside the half an hour, which was my goal, so we have enough time to discuss. And I would open the round to everyone to comment or ask questions.
Absolutely. If I have a really quick one, actually, Bastian. First of all, thank you so much for an incredible presentation. It was highly detailed, really great organized, definitely better than mine last time.
No.
But let me ask you this question. So you have this in Monday.com, which is you're basically communicating the roadmap to the external stakeholders, right? Like sales and business folks. And you also mentioned Jira. So does this mean that sometimes you have to create duplicates? For example, let's say there's a story in Jira that's highly technical, but it's about a feature for your engineering team. And you also want to communicate that particular task or that feature to, let's say, your roadmap to the business teams. So is there a lot of fair bit of, let's say, copy and paste and kind of mimicking required in this scenario? Because there's two tools.
Yeah, I mean, what should not happen is if you just copy and paste, because then it's a waste. Then you're doing something probably wrong, or you could use one tool if it's just a copy paste. But in my opinion, it shouldn't be a copy paste, because what is inside Jira just confuses a typical sales person, for example. So for me, it's very important. And in my last company, in my teams, I even had like a special, because we had such a big sales organization with 33 subsidiaries. I had product managers, but also so-called market managers, which worked outside towards the sales teams and marketing teams. So it was even different roles that they have. And for example, the market manager would then take a look at what the product manager has done in Jira and translating it in a way that sales team can work with it. At the current company, we do it the same. Make it easier, make it value-based, take out the technical stuff. And if you have to do this anyway, in my opinion, otherwise communication will not work very well. And so for me, it doesn't matter if it's the same tool or not.
Great. Thank you, Bastian. I will step aside now for more questions. I think we have one from Peter already on the chat, by the way.
Oh, I didn't look at that. Thanks. What time of training do you mean with more time for feedback and training? I mean the training for the salespeople. Like, with every at least complex feature that is added to the product, we typically do training. If you do the training in the moment that the salespeople can use the functionality in the software, you lose some time. You can already do this beforehand, for example, by adding some information here, adding the Q&A, maybe at some point of time when the UX design is fixed, also adding some wireframes. That's something you can do.
I also have a question regarding Jira. As far as I can see, Monday offers the same functionality as Jira. The only difference that I can see right now is that it maybe looks a bit better and is a bit more user-friendly. And what I do in Jira right now is just having a separate project, and on that project, that's basically what you showed us. So I have two different projects, one for displaying the roadmap, the other one for our developers. Is there anything on Monday.com that Jira doesn't offer?
Oh, yes, I think so. I mean, Jira, it really depends how you use Jira, I guess. Jira can be, if you just touch the surface, it's probably very similar to that. If you go into the deep Jira functionalities, especially also regarding automation, like, connecting test cases with tickets and stuff like this, I think there's a lot of functionality also in automation, documentation that Jira has as an additional value, definitely. I mean, our CTO, he knows Monday as well. I think he even uses it for task management, but he never so far thought about changing from Jira to Monday. Maybe I can ask him why.
Big question, Bastian. Does it integrate with any of those Confluence or Jira products?
Oh, okay. Yes, it can. It this is something we always thought about doing. We have not done it yet, but it offers, really, Monday sees itself, I think, as a very open tool to connect to pretty much anything. So there is also a Jira integration, yeah. And with anything else, Trello, and I don't know, really, they see it as their business model to be very open software.
Bastian, was this quite easy to get the sales teams and the likes bought into using it, or did they just resist a bit as another tool? Because salespeople, me included, hate having new stuff to have to deal with and learn and manage. We just want to get on and sell.
Yeah. No, I think the usability is quite high. If you don't make you can make it more complex, like with every Excel. Yeah, you can. The more columns you add, the more complex it gets, and people are maybe afraid to deal with that. But I mean, if you go inside themselves, take a look at one of the templates they have, it's really intuitive, I think. And I have felt the same with the sales teams. They instantly knew how it works. They discovered things themselves, like, oh, if I click on here, there's this pop-up coming and stuff like this. It's really, you just do that. It's intuitive. It's really good. I had no problems at all. And I like this tool especially because it's a live tool that lives with your product roadmap. Back in 2017, I still used PowerPoints that I updated to communicate the roadmap. It's like a static tool for something that is so constantly evolving, like the software products I manage. It just didn't fit together. And with Monday, it's so much better now.
And do you manage what goes into it purely just you, or is there other people, or would you advise just having one person managing what's being communicated? I suppose it depends on the size of your organization, but
right. I mean, right now I have a small team with 2 PMs. Then all the PMs are responsible for putting their stuff inside there. I mean, if you have a bigger organization with larger teams and more product people, I think it works as well, because I see it in the team management that it works, and you can set up read or write access to different people. It's really easy.
Awesome. I actually wanted to also talk about the slide you shared about the lead cycle, right? The sales cycle, and how you decide basically the need to know principle, right? I wanted to find out a little bit more about how do you figure that out? Like who needs to know what, right? What goes behind it rather than just communicating it. So if you have a little bit more about that, that would be nice.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first point starts that you did not say everything should know everything except if, but it's the other way around. Like, first of all, no one should know anything about the future roadmap if there's not a good reason for that. Like, that's the first thing you should start. And then you have to find this reason. Like, as I said, maybe what you are doing is probably not having a lot of effect because you can be very sure using the same technology. You don't want to move much faster in terms of velocity or something like this. Like, you don't have to change your development team a lot. Then why, include your VP of engineering a lot in what will be happening in 12 months? There's no reason for that. But as soon as and we had this case, we are developing a totally new product. It will be totally different. We probably need totally new technology. Therefore, we need other developers. It would be very stupid not to include the VP of engineering in this discussion. And that's how you should do it, in my opinion. First of all, say no to giving out information just because to give them out. Search for the reason, and if there is a good reason, then communicate it adequately.
There's a reason why I ask is because that's been a bigger challenge in my current role as well. Like we have a lot of external stakeholders. We have a content team that basically uses an internally built CMS to publish content on our platforms. And I mean, I've always wanted to communicate the product roadmap to them, let's say even in the short term. But that was quite hard, right? Because there was no strategy for that in the company before I joined. But in my opinion, also, it made much more sense for them to actually know that what the engineering team or the product team is currently working on, priority-wise as well, because they have a lot of requests that come up that they would expect to add on a roadmap, but it's not always possible. So I think it's also really, really valuable in communicating what we're currently working on, what our priorities are, so that they also know that, hey, maybe the product team is working on something much more important than what I might have to add. So might not be more pushy in let's say adding that to the roadmap. So I agree with that.
Yeah. Think about what's the effect at the end when you give this information would be my for example, what I think a lot often is, what do our basic developers want to know about what is happening? And this is also, I think, depends a lot of what type of developers you have. But in general, I'm rather on the side that they say, okay, it rather confuses them to give too much of an outlook of something that you are not really sure about that you will do. So with like the development team, also they would be on, like, they don't, in my case, don't get a lot of additional information compared to the sales teams. It would just be like really the development leads or the VP of engineering, for example, who would really know more details early.
I also have a question, Bastian. Thanks for showing how you use Monday to communicate value and also prioritization. Do you also use it to show how things relate to company goals or OKRs?
That's a very good point. At my current company, we don't work with OKRs, but I think would be a great thing to do. You can also, what you can do, for example, is connecting different tables you create with Monday. So you could just, you could make an OKR table and then say, okay, and this is how the point from the product roadmap pays into one of those. So that's something you could do. I'm at the current company, I'm not doing this.
Okay, one more question for me then. You hinted at some companies having public roadmaps. Do you have thoughts about that?
I have no, I mean, that's where I said my perspective is important, I think, because in the companies I work for, it wouldn't make any sense to do that. But I cannot say that it doesn't make sense in any case. Need to know principle can also mean maybe you gain a benefit of, if you're selling a B2C product, maybe that's very community driven. Of course, I think it can make sense to be more open about what you're doing and developing, because this is one of your values that you're providing. Yeah, that's like the community has the feeling they are really supporting how the product is shaped in the future. And yeah, that's, for example, I'm customer at the Tomorrow Bank. I don't know who knows them, but it's also like a fintech. And they have a public roadmap for what they're doing, and I enjoy it a lot to see what they're doing, and they have this community first approach. Yeah, I think it makes sense, but at the same time, I'm always asking myself, how do they handle the risk that they're giving the competition all of this information? Like if I'm a competitor of the Tomorrow Bank, I now know everything they are doing. But the pros and cons, think about them, and maybe the pros are bigger than the cons. I don't know.
I work with some games companies who are very community driven. They have community managers, and then they've got, obviously everything has to be developed in tandem with what the users are wanting or expecting. Otherwise, they'll just stop playing. So
Right.
And there can still be surprises, especially in the game industry, like, I don't know, special, partnerships with a celebrity or something that suddenly show up that are not announced far ahead. Whereas, I don't know, new technology or new server parks and stuff like that could be announced.
Yeah, true. Maybe in this case, you have a decoy effect in showing the competition your roadmap, which doesn't include certain points where you surprise the market. Yeah.
It's called the psych roadmap. You always put one out there. Psych. That's actually a really great idea.
cool. I think has anyone else got any final questions or any points they might want to raise? I suppose anyone used any similar tools to Monday.com other than Jira?
Notion. If anyone's using Notion, I use that quite a bit as well. Yeah, has a lot of integrations, but it definitely does not have the same kind of layout and I think use as Monday.com, because Notion is much more of like a personal note-taking connections, and you can basically create everything in normal markdown style components. So it's cool as well.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well,
all right, guys.
We're wrapping up. So thanks for joining us, Bastian. Thanks for your contribution. It was really good.
Yep, absolutely.
It will be recorded, so I guess we could share that with the group, wider group later. We're working on some interesting stuff in the background. We've got one of our other community members, Andrew Shea. We're putting together a series of events where we're going to delve into some interesting topics, and we are also working towards hopefully doing our first physical event in Berlin at the end of September. So there's a lot of stuff that we're working on, but yeah, any feedback, any suggestions, anything at all, drop it into Slack and we're all ears.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Well,
Thanks
guys,
for organizing.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining.
Everyone,
Yeah.
Talk to you.
Bastian.
Bye.
Have a great day ahead,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody. Have
Bye-bye.
a great weekend.
All
You too.
right. Bye-bye.